The conquest of Greece by Rome stands as one of the most pivotal moments in ancient history, reshaping the Mediterranean world's cultural, political, and military landscape for centuries to come. This transformative era marked the gradual transition of power from the fragmented Hellenistic kingdoms and city-states to the rising dominance of the Roman Republic. Understanding this process requires a careful examination of the complex interactions, conflicts, and alliances that paved the way for Rome's eventual control over Greece. In this exploration, we will trace Rome's incremental involvement in Greek affairs, highlighting the key events and challenges that defined this significant historical trajectory. The significance of Rome's conquest lies not merely in the military victories or territorial acquisitions but in the profound consequences it had for the ancient Mediterranean. Greek culture, renowned for its philosophy, art, and political thought, found a new context under Roman rule, influencing the development of the Western world in enduring ways. Yet, the path to this outcome was neither swift nor straightforward. Rome's engagement with Greece unfolded gradually, shaped by a series of wars, shifting alliances, and diplomatic maneuvers that reflected the complex power dynamics of the period. At the heart of this story is the challenge of presenting a narrative that captures both the broad sweep of historical change and the detailed intricacies of military and political developments. The Greek world was far from a monolithic entity. It was a mosaic of independent city-states, leagues, and kingdoms, each with its own interests and rivalries. Similarly, the Roman Republic was evolving from a regional power in Italy into a formidable empire with expanding ambitions. The interactions between these two worlds created a tapestry of conflict and cooperation that demands careful attention and nuanced analysis. As we delve into this narrative, it is essential to appreciate the gradual nature of Rome's involvement. Unlike sudden conquests that might be characterized by a single decisive battle, the Roman domination of Greece was a protracted process. It involved multiple wars, beginning with cautious interventions in the affairs of Macedon and the Greek leagues, eventually culminating in direct military occupation and administrative control. This process reflected Rome's strategic approach to expansion, combining military strength with diplomatic acumen and the exploitation of internal divisions among Greek states. Our journey through this historical landscape will begin by setting the stage with an overview of the Greek world before Roman intervention. Understanding the political fragmentation and instability that characterized Greece after the death of Alexander the Great is crucial to grasp why the region became vulnerable to external powers. From there, we will explore the early phases of Roman engagement, particularly during the Macedonian Wars, which marked Rome's initial forays into Greek geopolitics. The narrative will then follow the escalation of conflicts, the role of key military commanders, and the eventual subjugation of Greece under Roman authority. Throughout this exploration, we aim to maintain a balance between detailed historical exposition and broader thematic reflections. The military conflicts, while central, are intertwined with diplomatic strategies, cultural exchanges, and political transformations. By examining these aspects in tandem, we gain a more comprehensive understanding of how Rome transitioned from a Mediterranean power focused on Italy to the dominant force in the Hellenistic world. It is also important to acknowledge the inherent challenges in reconstructing this historical narrative. The sources available to us, ranging from ancient historians to archaeological evidence, often present differing perspectives or incomplete information. As historians and enthusiasts, we must piece together these fragments to form a coherent and insightful account while remaining open to new interpretations and discoveries. In presenting this story, we invite you to engage actively with the material. Please consider sharing your thoughts, questions, and insights on social media or in the comments section. Your participation enriches the dialogue and helps to illuminate the many facets of this fascinating period. Whether you are a seasoned scholar or a curious newcomer to ancient history, your engagement contributes to a deeper collective understanding. As we proceed, keep in mind the enduring impact of these events. The Roman conquest of Greece did not signify the obliteration of Greek culture, rather, it initiated a complex process of integration and transformation. Greek intellectual and artistic traditions heavily influenced Roman society, creating a cultural synthesis that would define much of the ancient world's legacy. This period set the stage for the later Roman Empire's dominance and the eventual spread of Greco-Roman civilization across Europe and beyond. In summary, this chapter serves as an introduction to the intricate and consequential narrative of Rome's conquest of Greece. We have outlined the significance of this historical turning point, the gradual nature of Roman involvement, and the challenges inherent in telling this story. As we move forward, we will delve deeper into the political and military developments that shaped this epoch, beginning with the fragmented state of Greece in the aftermath of Alexander the Great's empire. The stage was set with a Greece divided and weakened, the perfect environment for an ambitious power like Rome to extend its influence. Through a combination of military prowess, strategic alliances, and shrewd diplomacy, Rome would come to dominate the Greek world, changing its fate forever. Stay with us as we uncover the events and decisions that led to this monumental transformation in the ancient Mediterranean. Following the introduction to Rome's gradual involvement in Greek affairs, it is essential to examine the state of the Greek world in the crucial years after the death of Alexander the Great, a period marked by fragmentation, rivalry, and vulnerability that ultimately invited external intervention. The once mighty empire forged by Alexander, stretching from Macedonia through Asia Minor and into Egypt and the Near East, splintered rapidly as his generals, the Diadochi, vied for control. This fracturing created a complex and unstable political landscape across Greece and the surrounding Hellenistic kingdoms. In the decades following Alexander's death in 323 BC, Greece itself was far from a unified entity. The traditional polis system, which had defined Greek political life for centuries, was now overshadowed by larger leagues and kingdoms competing for dominance. Macedon, Alexander's homeland, remained a central power, but it faced challenges both from within and from other Greek states. The Achaean League, a federation of city-states in the northern Peloponnese, and the Aetolian League, located in central Greece, emerged as significant players. Alongside these leagues, the city-state of Sparta, though diminished from its classical heyday, continued to assert its own interests. This period was characterized by intense rivalry and shifting alliances, which prevented any single power from establishing lasting hegemony over Greece. The constant jockeying for influence weakened the region's internal cohesion and distracted from external threats. Macedon, under rulers such as Antigonus Tigonatas and later Philip V, sought to assert control over the Greek mainland, often clashing with the leagues and other city-states. Yet, these efforts were met with resistance, and the political map of Greece remained a patchwork of competing authorities and interests. The political instability of Greece during this era played a significant role in making the region susceptible to foreign intervention. Internal conflicts sapped resources and focus, while the lack of a unified front made it easier for external powers to exploit divisions. The Hellenistic kingdoms, though culturally connected by their shared heritage, were frequently at odds with one another, further fracturing the possibility of a coherent Greek resistance against emerging threats. Amid this turbulence, the Mediterranean world was witnessing the rise of a new power to the west, the Roman Republic. While Rome was still primarily concerned with consolidating its control over the Italian peninsula during the early part of this period, its ambitions and influence would soon extend beyond its traditional borders. The fragmented state of Greece presented an opportunity for Rome to become involved, initially through diplomatic alliances and later through direct military engagement. It is important to note that the Greek city-states and leagues themselves were not passive victims of these developments. Many sought to navigate the complex diplomatic environment by forging strategic alliances, engaging in warfare, and attempting to balance the influence of Macedon and other Hellenistic rulers. The Achaean and Aetolian leagues, in particular, played pivotal roles in shaping the course of events. Their interactions with Rome would become increasingly significant as the Republic's interests expanded into the eastern Mediterranean. Moreover, the cultural and economic vitality of Greece persisted despite political fragmentation. Greek cities remained centers of art, philosophy, and commerce, maintaining their influence across the region. This cultural resilience would later contribute to the blending of Greek and Roman traditions, even as political control shifted. However, the lack of political unity rendered these achievements vulnerable to external domination. The vulnerability of Greece was further exacerbated by ongoing conflicts among the Hellenistic kingdoms themselves. Beyond Macedonia and the leagues, other successor states such as the Seleucid Empire in Asia Minor and the Ptolemaic Kingdom in Egypt were engaged in their own struggles for power and territorial control. These broader Hellenistic rivalries often intersected with Greek affairs, complicating the political landscape and drawing external powers into local disputes. In addition to military clashes, diplomatic maneuvers were a constant feature of this period. Alliances were fluid and often driven by immediate strategic interests rather than lasting loyalty. Greek states frequently shifted their allegiances between Macedon, Rome, and other Hellenistic rulers, seeking to preserve their autonomy or gain advantage over rivals. This dynamic environment created openings for Rome to establish footholds through treaties and partnerships. The economic dimension also played a role in the shifting balance of power. Greek city-states had long been engaged in extensive trade networks across the Mediterranean and beyond. Control over key ports and trade routes was both a cause and consequence of political competition. As Rome's influence grew, access to these economic arteries became increasingly contested, intertwining commercial and military considerations. It is within this context of fragmentation, rivalry, and opportunity that Rome's initial engagement with Greece must be understood. The Republic's rise coincided with a period of Greek weakness and internal discord, making intervention both feasible and strategically advantageous. Rome's approach was cautious at first, combining diplomacy with selective military involvement, but it laid the groundwork for the more direct confrontations that would follow. Throughout this era, the Greek city-states and leagues remained active agents in their own right, shaping the unfolding events through their decisions and alliances. However, the cumulative effect of internal divisions and external pressures steadily eroded their capacity to resist the expanding Roman Republic. The stage was thus set for a series of conflicts that would irrevocably alter the political landscape of Greece and the wider Mediterranean world. In examining the Greek world before Roman conquest, we see a region marked by both cultural brilliance and political fragility. This duality explains why the conquest was not merely a matter of military conquest but also a complex process influenced by long-standing rivalries, shifting alliances, and economic interests. The fragmented nature of Greek political life created the conditions for Rome to emerge as the dominant power, not through immediate conquest but through a gradual accumulation of influence and control. As we proceed, this backdrop will serve as the foundation for understanding the initial phases of Rome's involvement in Greek affairs. The Macedonian Wars, in particular, represent the turning point where Rome transitioned from observer and occasional ally to active participant and eventual master of Greek politics and territory. The interplay between Greek internal conflicts and Roman ambitions illustrates the intricate nature of this historical transformation. This detailed look at Greece's pre-Roman condition underscores the complexity that any power confronting the region would face. It also highlights the strategic foresight of Rome in capitalizing on these divisions. The vulnerability of the Greek city-states and leagues was not simply a product of military defeat but the outcome of decades of political fragmentation and rivalry. Understanding these factors is essential to appreciating the deeper causes and consequences of Rome's conquest of Greece. In the next phase of our exploration, we will delve into Rome's early interactions with the Greek states, focusing on the First Macedonian War. This initial cautious engagement marked the beginning of Rome's extended involvement in Greek geopolitics and set a precedent for the Republic's expanding role in the eastern Mediterranean. The story of Rome and Greece is thus one of evolving relationships, where diplomacy and warfare intertwine to reshape the ancient world. Rome's initial forays into Greek affairs occurred against a backdrop of cautious calculation and measured diplomacy. The Republic, still consolidating its dominion over the Italian peninsula, was not yet poised for outright conquest in the eastern Mediterranean. Instead, Rome's early engagements with Greek states were marked by a pragmatic approach, combining alliances, limited military actions, and strategic positioning. This phase is best exemplified by the First Macedonian War, which stands as Rome's tentative entry into the complex geopolitics of Greece. The First Macedonian War, spanning from 214 to 205 BC, arose amid the wider context of the Second Punic War between Rome and Carthage. Philip V of Macedon, newly ascended to the throne, sought to expand his influence westward while Rome was preoccupied with Hannibal's campaigns in Italy. Recognizing an opportunity, Philip allied with Hannibal in a bid to challenge Roman power. In response, Rome found it necessary to counter Macedonian ambitions, but without diverting too many resources from its primary conflict with Carthage. This conflict was characterized by a cautious and somewhat indecisive military engagement. Rome did not commit to a full-scale invasion of Macedon or Greece but instead relied heavily on diplomacy and forming alliances with regional powers opposed to Macedonian dominance. Among these were the Aetolian League and the Achaean League, two of the major Greek federations that had vested interests in curbing Macedonian expansion. The Aetolian League, based in central Greece, had grown increasingly wary of Macedon's ambitions and welcomed Roman support as a counterbalance. Similarly, the Achaean League, though more cautious in its approach, also saw potential benefits in aligning with Rome. These alliances were not merely military arrangements but involved complex negotiations reflecting the shifting loyalties and rivalries within Greece itself. Rome's strategy during this period leveraged these Greek leagues to apply pressure on Philip V. Rather than engaging in direct confrontation with Macedonian forces on a grand scale, Rome supported allied Greek states in conducting localized operations. This approach allowed Rome to contain Macedonian influence without overextending its military commitments during a critical phase of the Punic Wars. The war itself saw limited and fragmented engagements rather than decisive battles. Macedonian forces conducted raids and sieges in Greek territories aligned with Rome, while Roman-supported allies attempted to disrupt Macedonian control where possible. The conflict remained largely contained within Greece and the Western Balkans, illustrating Rome's cautious approach to involvement in the region at this time. Diplomacy played an equally important role alongside military actions. Peace negotiations and truces punctuated the war, reflecting the mutual reluctance of Rome and Macedon to escalate the conflict beyond a manageable level. The eventual peace treaty, concluded in 205 BC at Phoenix, essentially restored the status quo ante bellum. Philip V agreed to cease hostilities against Rome's Greek allies but retained his Macedonian territories, leaving the balance of power in Greece largely unchanged. Despite its limited outcomes, the First Macedonian War was a significant milestone in Rome's eastern policy. It marked the Republic's formal entry into Greek geopolitics and set a precedent for future involvement. The war demonstrated Rome's ability to influence events through diplomacy and alliances, a tactic that would become a hallmark of its expansion strategy. Furthermore, this initial conflict exposed the complexities of Greek politics and the challenges Rome would face in navigating the divided landscape of leagues, city-states, and kingdoms. The cooperation with the Aetolian and Achaean leagues highlighted both the potential and limitations of using local actors to achieve broader strategic objectives. These alliances were often fragile, shaped by shifting interests and internal disputes within the leagues themselves. The First Macedonian War also underscored the importance of regional dynamics beyond Greece proper. The involvement of Illyrian tribes and the control of key coastal territories along the Adriatic Sea reflected the interconnected nature of political and military considerations. Control of these areas was crucial for securing supply lines and projecting power across the region. Rome's engagement during this period was thus characterized by a blend of restraint and opportunism. The Republic was keen to prevent Macedon from becoming a dominant power that could threaten its interests but was equally cautious not to provoke a wider conflict while still embroiled in the Punic Wars. This balancing act exemplified Rome's pragmatic approach to foreign policy in this era. The war's conclusion did not signify the end of Roman ambitions in Greece but rather a strategic pause. Rome had established a foothold in Greek affairs, gained valuable intelligence on the region's political intricacies, and built alliances that could be leveraged in future conflicts. For Philip V, the peace treaty was a temporary measure, allowing him to consolidate power and prepare for continued rivalry with Rome. This period also witnessed the beginning of Rome's reputation among the Greek states as a formidable power capable of influencing their fate. The presence of Roman legates and envoys in Greek courts became increasingly common, signaling a shift in the balance of diplomatic relations. Rome's ability to project influence without immediate territorial conquest was an important factor in its gradual domination of the eastern Mediterranean. The First Macedonian War thus set the stage for the more decisive confrontations that would follow in the coming decades. It illustrated the complexities of Greek politics, the utility of alliances, and the cautious but determined nature of Roman expansion. This initial cautious engagement foreshadowed the Republic's transformation into a Mediterranean superpower, capable of intervening decisively in the affairs of distant lands. As we move forward, the subsequent Macedonian Wars will reveal the escalation of conflict, the increasing assertiveness of Roman generals, and the gradual erosion of Macedonian power. The dynamics established during this early period, alliances with Greek leagues, exploitation of internal divisions, and a combination of military and diplomatic pressure, would become central themes in Rome's conquest of Greece. In examining these early interactions, we see a republic balancing immediate military concerns with long-term strategic interests. Rome's entry into Greek politics was neither accidental nor haphazard, it was a calculated move designed to secure its position in a volatile and strategically vital region. The lessons learned and relationships forged during the First Macedonian War would shape the trajectory of Roman-Greek relations for decades to come, ultimately culminating in Rome's dominance over the Hellenistic world. The conclusion of the First Macedonian War did not diminish Rome's interest in the Greek world, rather, it marked the beginning of a more assertive and expansive phase of Roman engagement. The Second and Third Macedonian Wars, spanning the early to mid-2nd century BC, would decisively shift the balance of power, as Rome moved from cautious involvement to direct military confrontation with Macedon. These conflicts not only dismantled Macedonian dominance but also paved the way for Roman supremacy in Greece and the wider Hellenistic world. The Second Macedonian War, fought from 200 to 197 BC, was precipitated by renewed tensions between Philip V of Macedon and the growing influence of Rome. Following the peace treaty of 205 BC, Philip had sought to strengthen his position in Greece and beyond, expanding his influence into the Aegean Sea and parts of Thrace. These moves alarmed the Greek leagues and Hellenistic kingdoms aligned with Rome, prompting the Republic to respond more decisively. Rome's decision to engage militarily was driven by a combination of strategic concerns and diplomatic appeals from Greek allies. The Aetolian League, still wary of Macedonian ambitions, played a significant role in encouraging Roman intervention. Additionally, the city-states of southern Greece, including Athens and the Achaean League, expressed apprehension about Philip's growing power. Rome, now confident in its military capabilities following victories in the Punic Wars, was prepared to assert its authority in the eastern Mediterranean. The war itself was marked by a series of campaigns led by the Roman general Titus Quinctius Flamininus, who demonstrated both military skill and diplomatic savvy. Flamininus sought to rally Greek support against Macedon, positioning Rome as a liberator of Greek freedom from Macedonian domination. This rhetoric resonated with many Greek states, enabling Rome to form a broad coalition that included various leagues and city-states. A pivotal moment came at the Battle of Cynocephaly in 197 BC, where the Roman legions confronted the Macedonian phalanx in a decisive engagement. The battle showcased the tactical superiority of the Roman legion over the traditional Macedonian formation. Despite the phalanx's formidable reputation, its rigidity proved vulnerable to the more flexible and disciplined Roman troops. The victory at Cynocephaly effectively ended Philip's capacity to challenge Roman interests. Following this defeat, the peace terms imposed on Macedon were stringent but measured. Philip V was forced to relinquish his territories outside Macedon proper, surrender his fleet, and pay a substantial indemnity. Crucially, Macedon's influence over the Greek city-states was curtailed, and Rome asserted its role as the arbiter of Greek affairs. However, Rome stopped short of annexing Macedon outright, opting instead for a form of indirect control that maintained the kingdom as a buffer state under Roman oversight. The aftermath of the Second Macedonian War also witnessed Rome's increasing involvement in the affairs of the Hellenistic world beyond Greece. The Republic extended its influence into Asia Minor and the Aegean Islands, often playing successor kingdoms against one another to prevent any single power from dominating the region. This approach reflected a sophisticated understanding of balance of power politics, allowing Rome to expand its reach without immediate territorial conquest. Yet, peace was not to last. The Third Macedonian War, from 171 to 168 BC, erupted due to renewed hostilities under Philip's successor, Perseus of Macedon. Perseus sought to restore Macedonian strength and resist Roman dominance, rallying support among disaffected Greek states and attempting to form coalitions with other Hellenistic powers. This resurgence threatened the fragile equilibrium Rome had imposed and compelled the Republic to respond with military force once more. The war culminated in the decisive Battle of Pydna in 168 BC, where the Roman legions, commanded by Lucius Aemilius Paulus, again confronted the Macedonian phalanx. The battle is often noted for its clear demonstration of the legion's tactical flexibility overcoming the phalanx's dense formation. The terrain at Pydna favored the Roman manipular system, which allowed for rapid adaptation to battlefield conditions, ultimately breaking the Macedonian lines. Perseus's defeat at Pydna marked the end of the Antigonid dynasty's power and Macedonian independence. Rome moved swiftly to dismantle the kingdom, dividing Macedon into 4 client republics and imposing strict limitations on its military capabilities. This fragmentation served to prevent any future consolidation of power that could challenge Roman interests. The Third Macedonian War's conclusion solidified Rome's dominance over Greece and its surrounding regions. The Republic's military successes were complemented by astute political maneuvers, incorporating former Macedonian territories into its sphere of influence while maintaining a semblance of local autonomy. The victory also sent a clear message to other Hellenistic states about the futility of resisting Roman expansion. Across these wars, several key figures emerged whose leadership shaped the outcomes and strategies employed. Philip V's early ambitions and tactical acumen were ultimately insufficient against Rome's evolving military machine. His successor, Perseus, while determined and resourceful, faced challenges in uniting the fractious Greek states under a common cause. On the Roman side, generals such as Flamininus and Paulus combined battlefield prowess with diplomatic skill, securing victories that were as much political as they were military. The military tactics employed during these conflicts reveal much about the changing nature of warfare in the Hellenistic period. The Macedonian phalanx, once the dominant formation under Philip II and Alexander the Great, increasingly showed its limitations against the more adaptable Roman legions. The legion's organization into smaller, more maneuverable units allowed for greater flexibility and responsiveness on varied terrain, advantages that proved decisive in battles such as Cynocephaly and Pydna. Furthermore, Rome's ability to marshal resources and manpower from its expanding network of allies and provinces provided a logistical edge. The legions were well-trained, disciplined, and supported by efficient supply lines, enabling sustained campaigns far from the Italian heartland. This contrast with Macedon's more traditional, albeit formidable, military structure was a critical factor in Rome's success. Politically, the wars facilitated the erosion of Macedonian influence over the Greek city-states and leagues. Rome's policy often involved empowering certain leagues, such as the Achaean League, while suppressing others or creating client states to maintain control. This strategy exploited existing divisions and ensured that no single Greek power could challenge Rome's hegemony. In the broader context, the Second and Third Macedonian Wars signaled a decisive shift in Mediterranean geopolitics. The decline of Macedon removed a major rival and opened the door for Rome to exert greater influence over the Hellenistic kingdoms. The Republic's role evolved from a regional power concerned primarily with Italy and the Western Mediterranean to an imperial power shaping the destiny of the entire Eastern Mediterranean basin. As these conflicts unfolded, Rome's expanding presence introduced new dynamics into Greek politics and society. The Republic's military victories were accompanied by political restructuring, economic integration, and cultural exchanges that would eventually lead to the full incorporation of Greece into the Roman world. Yet, at this stage, Rome maintained a degree of indirect control, using client states and alliances to manage the complex mosaic of Greek territories. The Second and Third Macedonian Wars thus represent critical chapters in the narrative of Roman expansion. They exemplify the Republic's transition from cautious involvement to decisive domination, showcasing the interplay of military innovation, diplomatic strategy, and political acumen. Through these wars, Rome dismantled Macedonian power, reshaped the Greek political landscape, and established itself as the preeminent force in the Eastern Mediterranean. In the next stages of our exploration, we will examine how the internal dynamics of the Greek leagues and the broader Hellenistic world influenced Rome's conquest. The fragmentation and rivalries among Greek states created conditions that Rome would skillfully exploit, consolidating its control and paving the way for the eventual subjugation of the entire region. The internal dynamics of the Greek leagues and city-states played a critical role in shaping the course of Rome's conquest of Greece. Far from a unified front, the Greek world was rife with divisions, rivalries, and internal conflicts that severely undermined collective resistance to Roman expansion. Rome's ability to exploit these fractures proved instrumental in its success, as it maneuvered deftly within a landscape marked by competing interests and shifting alliances. Two prominent federations, the Achaean League and the Aetolian League, exemplify the complexities of Greek political life during this period. Both leagues were confederations of city-states that sought to coordinate military and diplomatic efforts, yet their goals and strategies often diverged, reflecting the broader fragmentation of the Greek world. The Achaean League, centered in the northern and central Peloponnese, was a relatively cohesive entity that pursued a policy of cautious engagement with Rome. Initially, many Achaean cities welcomed Roman intervention as a counterbalance to Macedonian dominance, hoping that alliance with the Republic would secure their autonomy and protect against external threats. Over time, however, tensions arose as Rome's intentions became clearer, and the League's leaders grappled with the loss of genuine independence under Roman oversight. In contrast, the Aetolian League, located in central Greece, adopted a more confrontational stance at various points, at times resisting Roman influence and seeking alliances with Macedon or other powers. The Aetolians' internal divisions and fluctuating policies made them less reliable allies for Rome but also provided opportunities for the Republic to play different factions against each other. These leagues were not monolithic political bodies, they were composed of member city-states with their own interests, ambitions, and rivalries. This internal dissent often manifested in civil conflicts and disputes over leadership, further weakening the League's capacity to present a unified resistance. Rival factions within the leagues could and did align with different external powers, including Rome and Macedon, depending on shifting circumstances. Such fragmentation proved advantageous to Rome, which skillfully exploited these divisions through diplomatic initiatives and selective military interventions. By supporting certain factions within the leagues or promising protection and privileges, Rome gained footholds in Greek politics that would later facilitate more direct control. This approach minimized the need for large-scale invasions and allowed Rome to extend its influence incrementally. Civil wars and internal strife within Greek states further compounded their vulnerability. For instance, the Social War, 220 to 217 BC, a conflict involving the Achaean League and its neighbors, drained resources and attention from the looming threat posed by Rome and Macedon. These internecine struggles not only weakened military capabilities but also eroded the political cohesion necessary for effective resistance. Moreover, the political culture of the Greek city-states, with its emphasis on local autonomy and distrust of centralized authority, complicated efforts to form a unified front. The historical legacy of fierce independence fostered resistance to any hegemonic power, whether Macedonian or Roman, but it also made collective action difficult. This inherent tension within Greek politics created openings that Rome exploited by positioning itself as a protector of freedom while steadily increasing its own authority. The Roman Republic's diplomatic corps was adept at navigating these complexities. Roman envoys and generals engaged in negotiations, treaties, and propaganda campaigns aimed at winning support from Greek elites and populations. By portraying itself as a liberator rather than a conqueror, Rome cultivated an image that appealed to those dissatisfied with Macedonian rule or fearful of other rivals. However, this strategy was not without its challenges. Some Greek factions recognized the long-term implications of Roman involvement and resisted accordingly. The Achaean League, in particular, experienced growing unrest as Roman demands increased and local autonomy was curtailed. This tension eventually culminated in open conflict during the Achaean War, highlighting the limits of Rome's strategy of indirect control. The internal conflicts within Greek leagues also had military implications. The inability to coordinate effectively among their members and the presence of rival factions hampered the organization of cohesive armies capable of challenging Roman legions. Fragmented command structures and competing priorities often led to missed opportunities and disjointed campaigns. Furthermore, the economic strains imposed by continuous warfare and political instability weakened many Greek cities. Resources that could have been directed toward defense or economic development were instead consumed by factional disputes and shifting alliances. This economic degradation made the cities more dependent on external powers, including Rome, for security and stability. Roman commanders capitalized on these weaknesses by offering protection and favorable terms to compliant cities and leagues, while punishing those that resisted. This calculated combination of carrot and stick reinforced Rome's dominance and further fragmented Greek resistance. Cities that aligned with Rome often gained advantages over their rivals, creating incentives for others to follow suit. The broader geopolitical context also influenced internal Greek conflicts. Neighboring Hellenistic kingdoms such as the Seleucid Empire and Ptolemaic Egypt had their own agendas, occasionally intervening in Greek affairs or supporting different factions. Rome skillfully managed these external influences, ensuring that no coalition could form strong enough to oppose its interests. This mosaic of alliances, rivalries, and conflicts illustrates why the conquest of Greece was not a straightforward military campaign but a protracted political process. Rome's success derived as much from its diplomatic acumen and exploitation of Greek divisions as from its military might. The internal discord among Greek leagues and city-states created an environment in which Roman influence could grow steadily, often welcomed or at least tolerated by factions seeking advantage. In conclusion, the internal conflicts and rivalries within Greek leagues such as the Achaean and Aetolian, along with civil wars and political fragmentation, significantly weakened the region's ability to resist Rome. The Republic's strategic exploitation of these divisions through alliances, diplomacy, and military pressure allowed it to establish control with relatively limited direct confrontation initially. Understanding these dynamics is crucial to comprehending the nature of Rome's conquest, which was as much a political and diplomatic achievement as it was a series of military victories. As the story progresses, we will see how these internal conflicts culminated in more direct confrontations, including the final suppression of resistance in the Achaean War and the subsequent consolidation of Roman power in Greece. The interplay between Greek internal divisions and Roman strategy remains a central theme in the unfolding narrative of conquest and domination. The brief but significant uprising known as the Fourth Macedonian War underscores the fragility of Roman control in the aftermath of their victories over the Antigonid dynasty. This revolt, led by Andriscus, a self-proclaimed heir to the Macedonian throne, represented one of the last serious attempts to restore Macedonian independence and challenge the burgeoning dominance of Rome in the region. Andriscus, claiming descent from Perseus, the last legitimate king of Macedon, capitalized on lingering discontent among the Macedonian populace and segments of the military. His rebellion emerged in 150 BC, only a few years after the defeat of Macedon in the Third Macedonian War, reflecting unresolved tensions and the deep-seated desire among some Macedonians to reclaim sovereignty from Roman oversight. The revolt quickly gained momentum as Andriscus rallied support from various quarters within Macedon. His forces initially succeeded in reclaiming key territories and even achieved military victories against Roman-aligned forces. This resurgence alarmed Rome, which was determined to quash any challenges to its authority and maintain the stability of its eastern provinces. Rome's response was swift and decisive. The Republic dispatched a well-equipped and experienced army under the command of Quintus Caecilius Metellus, a general with a reputation for effective leadership. Metellus's campaign combined strategic military operations with efforts to isolate Andriscus politically, undermining his support among the Macedonian elite and neighboring states. The decisive engagement came at the Battle of Pydna in 148 BC, a site symbolic for its earlier significance in the Third Macedonian War. At Pydna, the Roman legions once again demonstrated their tactical superiority. The battle resulted in a crushing defeat for Andriscus's forces, effectively ending the revolt and any hopes of restoring Macedonian independence. Following the victory, Rome took measures to ensure that Macedon would no longer be a source of rebellion or autonomy. The monarchy was formally abolished, and Macedon was reorganized as a Roman province. This administrative shift marked a significant change from previous arrangements, reflecting Rome's intent to exercise direct control rather than relying on client kings or indirect rule. The annexation of Macedon as a province brought about several practical changes. Roman governors were appointed to oversee the region, responsible for maintaining order, collecting taxes, and administering justice. The establishment of a permanent Roman military presence helped deter future insurrections and secured key strategic routes across the Balkans. This transition also had profound implications for the local population. The imposition of Roman law and administration altered traditional power structures, often diminishing the influence of the Macedonian aristocracy. While some elites adapted by cooperating with Roman authorities, others found their status and privileges curtailed. Economically, provincial status integrated Macedon more closely into the Roman system, facilitating trade and resource extraction to benefit the Republic. However, the increased taxation and military requisitions sometimes strained local communities, contributing to social tensions that would persist in various forms. The suppression of Andriscus's revolt and the subsequent provincial organization represented the final chapter in Macedonian resistance to Rome. The once powerful kingdom that had dominated Greek affairs for centuries was now firmly under Roman rule, its political independence extinguished. This development also symbolized a broader pattern in Rome's eastern expansion. While earlier phases of conquest involved alliances, client states, and indirect influence, the experience with Macedon demonstrated the Republic's willingness to impose direct provincial governance when necessary. This shift foreshadowed similar arrangements in other parts of Greece and the Hellenistic world. The Fourth Macedonian War, though brief, had lasting consequences. It affirmed Rome's capacity to respond effectively to rebellion and underscored the futility of armed resistance against the Republic's military and administrative apparatus. Moreover, by transforming Macedon into a province, Rome secured a critical strategic foothold that facilitated further consolidation of control over Greece and the surrounding regions. In the broader context, the fall of Macedon as an independent kingdom marked the end of an era in Greek history. The Macedonian monarchy, which had played a central role since the rise of Philip II and Alexander the Great, was no more. Its dissolution signified the definitive ascendancy of Rome as the dominant power in the eastern Mediterranean. The military and political lessons from this conflict informed Rome's dealings with other Greek states and leagues. The Republic increasingly favored direct administration or the establishment of provinces over reliance on client monarchs, recognizing that permanent presence and control were essential for maintaining order and securing interests. This period also witnessed the gradual erosion of traditional Greek political institutions and autonomy. The integration of Macedon into the Roman provincial system was a model that would be replicated elsewhere, contributing to the transformation of the Greek world from a collection of independent city-states and kingdoms into territories governed by Roman law and officials. Yet, despite the loss of political sovereignty, Macedon and Greece retained much of their cultural vitality. Greek language, art, and philosophy continued to flourish, even as Roman influence permeated governance and society. The coexistence of Greek cultural heritage with Roman political dominance would define the character of the region for centuries. In summary, the Fourth Macedonian War and the defeat of Andriscus marked the final military resistance of Macedon against Rome. The establishment of Macedon as a Roman province signified a turning point in Rome's consolidation of power in Greece. This event not only ended Macedonian monarchy but also heralded a new phase of direct Roman administration, setting a precedent for the incorporation of other Greek territories into the Republic's expanding empire. As we continue our exploration, the focus will shift to the broader consequences of Roman victories in Greece, particularly the dramatic events surrounding the sack of Corinth and the consolidation of Roman authority in the region. These developments further illustrate the transformation of Greece under Roman rule and the Republic's transition from regional power to imperial hegemony. The destruction of Corinth in 146 BC stands as a defining moment in the consolidation of Roman power over Greece, symbolizing both the culmination of decades of conflict and the establishment of unchallenged Roman authority in the region. This event, known as the Achaean War, was not merely a military confrontation but carried profound political and cultural significance, marking the definitive end of Greek independence and the beginning of a new administrative era under Rome. Corinth, situated strategically on the isthmus connecting mainland Greece to the Peloponnese, was one of the wealthiest and most influential city-states in the Greek world. Its commercial prosperity, cultural vibrancy, and political power made it a pivotal player in regional affairs. However, Corinth's prominence also positioned it as a focal point of resistance against Roman encroachment, particularly as tensions grew within the Achaean League. The Achaean League, by the mid-2nd century BC, had become increasingly assertive in its desire to preserve Greek autonomy and resist Roman domination. While earlier alliances with Rome had been pragmatic, the growing interference of Roman magistrates and military commanders in League affairs fueled resentment and nationalist sentiment among its members. Corinth emerged as a central figure in this opposition, rallying support for a stance of defiance. The immediate cause of the Achaean War was a complex interplay of political provocations and mutual distrust. Rome accused the Achaean League of violating peace treaties and threatening the stability of the region. In response, the League asserted its right to self-governance and challenged Roman authority. Diplomatic efforts failed to resolve these disputes, and hostilities erupted in 146 BC. Roman forces, under the command of Lucius Mummius, were dispatched to suppress the revolt swiftly and decisively. The campaign was characterized by its brutality and efficiency, reflecting Rome's determination to make an example of Corinth and deter further resistance. The siege and subsequent sack of Corinth were marked by widespread destruction, looting, and the slaughter or enslavement of much of the population. The fall of Corinth was both symbolic and practical. Symbolically, it represented the extinguishing of one of the last bastions of Greek political independence. Corinth had long been a cultural and economic beacon, and its destruction sent a clear message about the consequences of opposing Rome. Practically, it allowed Rome to eliminate a powerful rival and secure control over a vital strategic and commercial hub. In the aftermath, Rome established the province of Achaea, encompassing the Peloponnese and central Greece. This new administrative unit marked a significant shift from indirect influence to formal provincial governance. Roman officials were appointed to oversee the region, ensuring compliance with imperial policies and facilitating the integration of Greek territories into the Republic's expanding empire. The establishment of Achaea as a province brought changes in governance, law, and military presence. While some local institutions were retained for practical purposes, ultimate authority rested with Roman magistrates and governors. The province became subject to Roman taxation and legal systems, further eroding traditional Greek political autonomy. Despite the devastation of Corinth, Roman rule did not aim to obliterate Greek culture. On the contrary, the Republic recognized the enduring value of Greek art, philosophy, and learning. Many Greek cities continued to thrive as centers of culture and education, albeit under the shadow of Roman political control. The integration of Greece into the Roman world initiated a complex process of cultural exchange and adaptation. Economically, the province of Achaea benefited from its incorporation into the vast Roman trade network. The security provided by Roman governance and the infrastructure investments that followed facilitated commerce and urban development. However, these benefits often came alongside increased economic exploitation and social stratification, as Roman elites and local collaborators accumulated wealth and power. Socially, the sack of Corinth and the establishment of Roman rule altered the fabric of Greek society. The loss of political independence diminished the status of traditional elites, while Roman citizenship and legal frameworks introduced new opportunities and challenges for inhabitants. Over time, many Greeks assimilated aspects of Roman culture, contributing to the evolving identity of the region. The destruction of Corinth also had reverberations beyond the province of Achaea. It sent a powerful signal to other Greek states and leagues about the futility of resistance. Rome's willingness to exercise overwhelming force reinforced its reputation as the dominant power in the eastern Mediterranean. This event effectively ended organized military opposition to Roman authority within mainland Greece. Furthermore, the fall of Corinth marked a turning point in Rome's imperial policy. The Republic increasingly embraced direct provincial administration as a means to secure and manage its expanding territories. The experience in Greece informed subsequent approaches to governance in other regions, blending military oversight with local political structures. From a military perspective, the campaign against the Achaean League showcased Rome's capacity for rapid and decisive action. The legions demonstrated their discipline and effectiveness, while Roman commanders balanced force with political considerations to consolidate control. The incorporation of Greece as a province provided a stable base for future military operations in the eastern Mediterranean. Politically, the Achaean War and the sack of Corinth underscored the limits of Rome's earlier strategy of indirect influence through client states and alliances. The Republic recognized that certain regions required more direct control to prevent unrest and secure imperial interests. This realization would shape the evolution of Roman provincial administration in the centuries to follow. In cultural terms, the legacy of Corinth endured despite its destruction. The city was eventually rebuilt under Roman auspices and regained some of its former prominence as a commercial and cultural center. The blending of Greek and Roman elements in art, architecture, and society exemplified the broader process of cultural integration that defined the province of Achaea. In conclusion, the sack of Corinth and the establishment of the Roman province of Achaea represent a watershed moment in the history of Roman-Greek relations. This event not only marked the end of Greek political independence but also signaled the Republic's transition into a Mediterranean empire with direct administrative control over its conquered territories. The consequences of this transformation reverberated throughout the ancient world, shaping the political, economic, and cultural landscape for generations. As we proceed, we will examine how Rome's administration and cultural integration influenced Greek society, exploring the adaptations and continuities that characterized this complex and enduring relationship between conqueror and conquered. With the establishment of Roman provincial governance following the sack of Corinth and the creation of the province of Achaea, Rome embarked on a new phase of administration and cultural integration in Greece. This period was marked by the imposition of Roman political structures alongside a remarkable degree of cultural exchange, as Greek traditions continued to flourish even under foreign rule, profoundly influencing Roman society in turn. Roman administration in Greece was characterized by the appointment of governors, typically senators or experienced magistrates, who wielded broad authority over legal, military, and fiscal matters. These officials were responsible for maintaining order, collecting taxes, and overseeing the region's integration into the broader Roman system. Unlike earlier arrangements that relied on client kings or allied leagues, direct provincial rule signified a more hands-on approach by Rome, ensuring tighter control over Greek territories. Despite this direct governance, Rome often allowed a degree of local autonomy, preserving existing Greek municipal institutions where practical. City councils and magistracies continued to function, managing day-to-day affairs and civic life, albeit under the watchful eye of Roman authorities. This pragmatic approach facilitated smoother administration and reduced the likelihood of unrest, as local elites could retain some influence and status. The coexistence of Roman political structures and Greek civic traditions created a unique administrative hybrid. Roman law increasingly became the foundation for governance, yet it was frequently adapted to accommodate local customs. Over time, this legal and institutional blending contributed to the development of a provincial identity that was neither wholly Greek nor Roman but a synthesis of both. Culturally, the relationship between Greece and Rome during this period was dynamic and transformative. Greek art, literature, philosophy, and education continued to thrive and, importantly, exerted a profound influence on Roman elites. The Romans admired Greek culture, viewing it as the pinnacle of intellectual and artistic achievement. Wealthy Romans often sought Greek tutors for their children, collected Greek artworks, and sponsored public buildings inspired by Hellenistic styles. This cultural admiration did not equate to subjugation but rather a complex form of cultural assimilation and exchange. Greek thinkers and artists found new audiences in Rome, while Roman patrons supported the continuation and adaptation of Greek cultural forms. This interplay enriched both societies and laid the groundwork for what would later be called Greco-Roman civilization. Greek elites played a pivotal role in this process of integration. Many members of the traditional aristocracy adapted to Roman rule by adopting Roman citizenship and participating in the imperial administration. These local elites acted as intermediaries between Rome and the broader population, helping to implement policies and maintain social order. Their cooperation was essential to the stability and prosperity of the province. The adoption of Roman citizenship by Greeks was a gradual but significant social transformation. Initially limited to certain privileged individuals, citizenship eventually expanded, granting legal rights and privileges that fostered a sense of inclusion within the Roman state. This expansion helped to bind Greece more closely to Rome politically and socially. Economically, Roman administration facilitated the integration of Greek cities into imperial trade networks. Improved infrastructure, such as roads and ports, enhanced connectivity and commerce. Greek cities benefited from increased access to markets throughout the Mediterranean, although this integration also exposed local economies to the fluctuations and demands of the broader empire. However, Roman rule was not without its challenges for Greek society. The imposition of taxes and the presence of occupying forces sometimes provoked resentment. Social stratification intensified as Roman officials and wealthy collaborators accumulated power and wealth, often at the expense of traditional communal structures. Rural areas, in particular, could suffer from exploitation and neglect. Despite these tensions, the blending of Greek and Roman cultures created a fertile environment for intellectual and artistic achievements. Cities such as Athens, Corinth, and Rhodes remained centers of learning, attracting students and scholars from across the empire. The philosophical schools of Greece continued to influence Roman thought, while public architecture reflected a fusion of styles and techniques. Religious life also demonstrated this syncretism. Greek deities were often identified with Roman counterparts, leading to shared worship practices and festivals. This religious integration helped to unify diverse populations within the province and reinforce the cultural bonds between Greece and Rome. The provincial administration also introduced Roman legal and civic concepts, such as municipal citizenship and public benefactions, which reshaped local political culture. The emphasis on public works, including theaters, baths, and temples, underscored the role of urban centers as hubs of social and cultural life under Roman patronage. In addition to elite cultural exchanges, everyday life in Greece experienced gradual Roman influences. Latin language elements entered local dialects, Roman dress and customs were adopted by some, and the presence of Roman soldiers and settlers introduced new social dynamics. However, the Greek language and identity remained dominant, serving as a unifying factor for the population. This period of cultural integration set the stage for the long-term coexistence of Greek traditions within the Roman imperial framework. Rather than erasing Greek identity, Roman rule facilitated its diffusion throughout the empire. The preservation and adaptation of Greek culture under Roman auspices contributed significantly to the legacy of classical civilization. In political terms, the province of Achaia and other Greek territories became important components of the empire's eastern provinces. They provided recruits for the Roman army, centers of administration, and cultural hubs that influenced imperial policy and ideology. The prestige of Greek learning and art enhanced Rome's own cultural capital, shaping the identity of the empire. The complexities of governance, cultural exchange, and social transformation during this period illustrate the nuanced nature of Roman conquest and rule. Rome's dominance was not merely imposed by force but involved negotiation, adaptation, and mutual influence. Greek society was transformed but also resilient, maintaining its distinctiveness even as it became an integral part of the Roman world. Understanding this phase of Roman administration and cultural integration is essential to appreciating the enduring legacy of Greco-Roman civilization. The fusion of political institutions, artistic expression, and intellectual traditions created a foundation that influenced European and Mediterranean history for millennia. As we continue, our examination will turn toward the broader impacts of Roman rule on Greek society and economy, exploring how these changes affected the lives of ordinary people and reshaped the social landscape of the region. Roman domination brought profound changes to Greek society and economy, reshaping the ancient world in ways that would resonate for centuries. The political conquest was only the beginning. The integration of Greece into the Roman Empire initiated a series of social and economic transformations that altered the very fabric of Greek life. Understanding these developments reveals the complexity of Roman rule and its lasting impact on the region. One of the most significant changes was in land ownership and agricultural practices. The traditional system of independent city-states, with their surrounding rural territories, gradually gave way to larger estates often controlled by Roman elites or local aristocrats who had aligned themselves with Rome. These latifundia, vast agricultural estates, became centers of production, frequently relying on slave labor, which increased following Rome's military campaigns and expansion. This shift had several consequences. Smallholders and peasant farmers, who had once formed the backbone of Greek rural society, found themselves displaced or economically marginalized. Many were compelled to sell their land or became tenant farmers, working under the control of wealthier landowners. This concentration of land ownership contributed to social stratification and economic disparity within Greek communities. Trade networks also evolved under Roman rule. The incorporation of Greece into the vast Roman economic system connected Greek cities to new markets across the Mediterranean. Ports such as Corinth and Piraeus flourished as hubs of commerce, facilitating the movement of goods including grain, wine, olive oil, and luxury items. Roman infrastructure investments, such as roads and harbors, enhanced these commercial activities, promoting economic integration. However, this increased connectivity came with challenges. Local economies became more dependent on imperial demands and subject to fluctuations in supply and demand from distant regions. Furthermore, taxation imposed by Roman authorities placed additional burdens on producers and merchants, sometimes stifling local initiative and leading to economic hardship. Urban development in Greek cities reflected the changing economic and social realities. While many cities benefited from Roman patronage and investments, leading to the construction of public buildings, baths, theaters, and temples, others experienced decline due to shifting trade routes or population movements. The urban landscape became a mosaic of thriving centers alongside towns struggling to maintain their former status. Social transformations accompanied these economic shifts. The traditional autonomy and political power of the city-states waned under Roman administration, reducing local participation in governance. Roman citizenship, initially limited, gradually expanded to include more inhabitants, altering the social hierarchy and creating new avenues for political and economic advancement. The spread of Roman citizenship also facilitated greater legal uniformity and integration but sometimes eroded local customs and privileges. The blending of Greek and Roman identities produced a complex social fabric, wherein individuals navigated dual allegiances and cultural expectations. Slavery, already a feature of Greek society, expanded under Roman rule, especially in agricultural estates and urban households. The influx of slaves from Roman conquests increased the labor pool but also deepened social inequalities. At the same time, some freed slaves and their descendants integrated into society, contributing to its diversity. Despite these profound changes, Greek culture remained resilient and influential. The education system, philosophical schools, and artistic traditions continued to flourish, often supported by wealthy patrons who embraced both Greek and Roman values. This cultural vitality helped preserve a sense of identity amid political subjugation. Economically, the province of Achaia and other Greek territories became important sources of revenue and resources for Rome, while also serving as centers of cultural exchange. The prosperity of some cities attracted immigrants and merchants, fostering cosmopolitan environments that reflected the interconnectedness of the Roman Empire. However, the benefits of Roman rule were unevenly distributed. While elites and urban populations might enjoy increased wealth and opportunities, rural communities and lower classes frequently faced hardships due to taxation, land displacement, and social marginalization. These disparities sometimes led to local unrest or social tensions. The Roman administration sought to balance control with accommodation, employing local elites in governance and maintaining certain traditional institutions. This approach helped maintain stability but did not eliminate underlying social and economic challenges. In summary, the integration of Greece into the Roman Empire brought sweeping changes to land ownership, trade, urban development, and social structures. The traditional city-state model gave way to a more hierarchical and economically interconnected society, shaped by Roman policies and imperial demands. Yet, Greek cultural traditions endured, influencing the Roman world and contributing to a shared Greco-Roman heritage. As we approach the final stages of this narrative, the enduring legacy of this period becomes clear. The fusion of Greek and Roman elements created a civilization whose influence would extend far beyond the ancient Mediterranean, shaping the foundations of Western culture and history. The Roman conquest of Greece stands as a watershed moment in Mediterranean history, not merely because of the military and political domination it entailed, but due to the profound cultural interplay it initiated, one that would shape the trajectory of Western civilization for millennia. The legacy of this era is both complex and enduring, reflecting a synthesis of Greek intellectual and artistic traditions with Roman political and administrative prowess. Despite the definitive military subjugation of Greece, the influence of Greek culture on Rome was far from diminished. Indeed, the Romans held Greek art, philosophy, literature, and science in the highest esteem, often viewing Greek culture as the pinnacle of refinement and intellectual achievement. Roman elites frequently sought Greek tutors for their children, collected Greek artworks, and emulated Hellenistic architectural styles. This cultural admiration facilitated a unique dynamic wherein Greece, though politically conquered, became a source of inspiration and education for the Roman world. The fusion of Greek and Roman elements gave rise to what modern historians term Greco-Roman civilization, a rich tapestry of cultural, philosophical, and artistic achievements that blended the best of both societies. This synthesis influenced not only the Mediterranean basin but also the broader European continent and, through later historical developments, the entire Western tradition. Politically, the Roman domination of Greece marked a decisive shift in the balance of power in the ancient world. Rome's ascendancy dismantled the old Hellenistic kingdoms and leagues, replacing them with a centralized imperial structure that extended Roman law, governance, and military authority across the region. The establishment of Roman provinces and the incorporation of Greek territories into the empire created unprecedented levels of administrative integration and political stability. Yet, this political transformation did not erase the distinct identity of the Greek people. Local languages, religious practices, and civic customs persisted and even flourished under Roman rule. The coexistence of Greek cultural heritage with Roman political authority created a layered identity within the provinces, where inhabitants navigated dual loyalties and adapted to changing circumstances. The impact of Roman conquest also set the stage for the spread of Christianity centuries later, as Greek was the lingua franca of the Eastern Mediterranean and the language of the New Testament. The cultural and infrastructural foundations laid during the Greco-Roman period thus had far-reaching religious and historical consequences. As we reflect on this era, it becomes clear that the Roman conquest was not simply an act of military domination but a complex process involving diplomacy, cultural exchange, and adaptation. Rome's ability to absorb and integrate Greek culture enriched its own civilization, while Greek cities and elites found new roles within the imperial framework. This mutual influence shaped the character of the Mediterranean world long after the Republic's expansion. For those interested in further exploring the rich interactions between Greece and Rome, numerous avenues exist, from the study of ancient philosophy and literature to the examination of art, architecture, and political history. Each aspect offers insights into how these two great civilizations intertwine to produce a legacy that continues to captivate scholars and enthusiasts alike. We encourage you to engage with this fascinating history by watching related content, reading scholarly works, and participating in discussions. Your interest and curiosity contribute to a deeper understanding of the past and its enduring significance. Please consider liking, commenting, and sharing this exploration. Your support helps to bring more detailed and nuanced historical narratives to a wider audience. Together, we can continue to uncover the stories that shaped our world and illuminate the complexities of ancient civilizations. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the Roman conquest of Greece and the birth of Greco-Roman civilization. Stay tuned for future explorations that will delve into other pivotal moments and cultural crossroads in history. If you love the story, like the video and subscribe.